Ken Follett was born in Cardiff and grew up in a family where television and cinema were forbidden, so books became his window to the world. He studied philosophy at University College London, worked as a journalist and then in publishing, but his real breakthrough came in 1978 with a spy thriller Eye of the Needle, in Portuguese O Buraco da Agulha, which won the Edgar Award and made him an international name. From there, he became a master of two genres: the taut, suspenseful thriller, The Key to Rebecca, A Chave para Rebecca, The Man from St. Petersburg, O Homem de São Petersburg. You have all translated in Portuguese. And the sweeping historical epic, his most famous novel, The Pillars of the Earth, Os Pilares da Terra, set in medieval England and has sold tens of millions of copies and spawns the beloved Kingsbridge series, which now stretches across 900 years of history. You also wrote the Century Trilogy, which was praised and chosen as a favorite in this podcast, and covering this the 20th century through the lives of five families across Europe and America. Today, Ken Follett is celebrated not only for his storytelling, but also for his meticulous research and ability to make history feel alive. You started writing because of a broken car. You had joked before that you wrote your first novel when you needed around 230 euros. I've had 200 pounds to fix your car and discovered that writing could be more lucrative than journalism. And today you have sold over 20 million books worldwide. Also played bass guitar in a rock band, was part of a group called Damn Right, I Got the Blues. I love this title, and music remains one of your passions. So you love chess, strategy games, your taste for suspense and plotting extends beyond novels into hobbies that require patience and clever moves. Welcome, Ken Follett. What an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be on the show.
Thank you. So let's start, of course. We could speak all day about all your books, but let's talk about your latest book that just arrived in Portugal, O Círculo dos Dias, Circle of Days. It's imagining how Stonehenge was built around, I've made the math, 200, 2500 BCE, before Common Era, so roughly 4,500 years ago.
That's right. Yes.
I'm never gonna see it at as I saw it until today, until I read your book. Now I imagine the wood.
Yeah.
So tell me about it. Congratulations.
Well, there's a lot that's mysterious about Stonehenge, and that's really what I found attractive when I began to research it, to see whether I would write a story about it. Of course, in every historical novel, there's a basis of fact, and then the author imagines things on top of that basis. The difference with the Stone Age is that very little is known about the Stone Age. They didn't have writing, so there are no written records from the Stone Age. Uh, so there are three mysteries. One, who built Stonehenge? Two, how did they build it? And three, why did they build it? And I began to look into all of these things, and of course, the gaps in the historical record have to be filled in by my imagination.
Of course. And I loved your imagination. I loved Seth, which today would be an engineer.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
And
And
Neen.
of course, I knew I had to have a character like that because the biggest problem facing the people in the story who want to build this monument, the biggest problem is they want to use these huge stones, which are in a valley 30 kilometers away. And of course, they're ambitious. They think it will be great to make a monument with these huge stones. Now, the stones are 7 or 8 meters high, and they weigh 25 tons. So the biggest problem they face is how they're going to move them 30 kilometers. And you have to bear in mind that there were no carts in the Stone Age because they hadn't invented the wheel yet. And anyway, they hadn't come up with the idea of getting horses and cattle to pull things for them. So the only way to move them was for human beings to move them. Uh, that, so we don't know that. but we deduce it because we can't think of any other way. I mean, some people have like crazy theories, like it was aliens from outer space who came down in a spaceship and built Stonehenge, or it was giants from another country. But we don't really believe, we don't believe any of those things. So we think it must have been human beings. And so now archaeologists like to do experiments to see whether their theories are true. And one of the experiments they did was to get a stone, a huge stone, 25 tons, and tie ropes all around it, and see how many people were necessary to pull it. And it turned out to be 200. So now we know the problem is to get 200 people to leave their homes and go to this valley and spend, they don't know how long, days, maybe a week, maybe more, dragging this stone across the ground. And I started out by telling you about Seft. Seft's role in this is that when there's a problem, he is the practical guy who solves it. And uh, when I started the book, I thought, well, we don't want too much of this kind of engineering stuff because it might not be interesting enough for readers. But I realized when I was writing the book that actually it's very dramatic because these people have said, we are going to bring the biggest stones in the world to Stonehenge, to build Stonehenge. And other people have said to them, no, you're not. You can't do that. They're too heavy. It's 30 kilometers. How are you going to get them from here to there? And the people have said, well, we don't know how we're going to do it, but we're definitely going to do it. And so when they come across a problem, there's a snag, they're thinking, oh my goodness, we can't go home and say to everybody, you were right. It's impossible. We can't do it. We've failed. That would be so embarrassing. It would be humiliating. So, so Seft, so they're desperate to find a way to solve the problem. Like the very first problem they solve, here is this giant stone, but it's flat on the ground and it's slightly buried. So they've got to somehow get it upright. 25 tons. Now they've got, you know, you would get, if you got 50 people with crowbars, you can imagine doing it, but they didn't have crowbars because they didn't have iron.
Yeah.
So all they had was branches of trees, which aren't really hard enough for this kind of thing. Anyway, that was their first problem. And Seft solves it. And as they slowly drag an enormous stone across Salisbury Plain, they come across other problems as well. And so there had to be a clever engineer type. And so he's Seft, and
Yeah.
he's quite young. Um, he's there's an English word deft, which means you're good with your hands. And Seft sounds a bit like deft. That's why I gave him that name. And so he's one of the two heroes of the story.
Yes. And of course, someone might have told you already, Joia, the priestess, his sister-in-law, Joia in Portuguese means jewel.
Oh, nice. Oh, good. Well, of
Yeah.
course, we don't know what names were used in the Stone Age because nothing was written down, and so we have no way of finding out. So I thought, well, uh, you know, um, I'm not going to call these people, John and David and Susan,
Yeah.
because that would really be really odd in the Stone Age. So I had to make up names. I had to make up words which sounded as if they might be names, but they aren't actually names, at least not in English. And that was my solution. They're all imaginary names. I made them all up, and uh, I guess whatever their names were, they would have been words that aren't familiar to us. So it would have been something like that.
Yeah. And it helps us because we have a lot of characters. It helps us to know who's who.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
And
Yeah.
other things that you turned simple And it probably was at that time, of course, but it also helped us to understand. For example, you said so yourself, engineering. He was a handyman. Even math. I loved the details where she doesn't count one, two, three. She counts with her fingers. So how old are you? She shows both hands and both feet. That means she's 20.
Yes,
Wow. So you
yes,
made
that's
me,
right.
yeah, you made me
Well,
see.
people had different means of counting, and the history of counting is quite interesting. And I thought maybe the at the time that I'm writing about, maybe some people would have modern ways of counting, up to 10, and then 100, then 1,000. But others would have more primitive ways of counting. So the herders it's called counting on the body. So fingers and toes, 10, 20, but then they go 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. And there are people in the world who are still using that method of counting today.
Yeah.
And of course, the hunter-gatherers, there was a time when we were all hunter-gatherers, before the age of governments and armies and so on. There are hunter-gatherers in the world today who haven't changed since those old days, and they count. They often only have four words for counting. So they say one, a pair, another one, and many.
Yeah, you
That's
said
it.
you
That's
have
all
that
they
in your,
have.
yeah, you have that in your book. Have one,
Yeah,
two, three, four more.
yeah. That's it. That's right. Yeah, which is so that these are. Uh, uh, the story is about the people, of course, but these kind of historical oddities are quite amusing.
Yeah, it must be. I think you can show that. You can tell by reading. It was fun writing this book.
Oh yes, yes. Well, mind you, I always enjoy it. That's why I'm still doing it, even though I'm 76. It's really, I find it really interesting. I find history fascinating now, and writing about history is a fascinating challenge.
It is, it is, and you had throughout your whole career exactly this system where you can study and learn. Even for us reading it, it's fun also because I'm learning while I'm not, it's not a class. It's
Right?
it's a pleasure.
Yes, good.
Yeah, and the lives of the farmers, the herders, the hunter-gatherers who come together, and then boy, do they clash.
Yeah. Well, there were those three kinds of society existed in Europe in the Stone Age. So it's perfectly possible that they would coexist on Salisbury Plain. The plain is grass, so it's good for herds. And the river valleys alongside the plain, the land is more fertile, so they're farmed. And then, of course, in the woods are no good for anything, so the hunter-gatherers live there and they eat nuts, and occasionally they kill a bear and eat it.
Exactly. A a hungry bear.
Yeah,
In this case, yeah, sure. So we have Seft and Joya and Neen. So you have to study a lot, of course, to write your
yeah,
books, and you write them, and then you have the tours and interviews like this, and you often speak in interviews about warmly about balancing writing with family life, same as some of our characters try to do. So, Ken Follett, when are you able to read?
Oh, well, every evening, of course. That's normally when I do it. And sometimes if sometimes in the car, I sit in the back and read, and I quite like the Kindle in the back of the car. Um, it can be difficult to read in a car, but with a bright screen and large type, it becomes easy. And so yeah, I yesterday I had to go into London for something and come back out. I live about I'm about an hour and a half from London. So there's 3 hours in the car. So I spent that time reading.
And you don't get car sick.
I don't know, luckily.
Lucky you, exactly. So now let's get to know the reader, and of course, I recommend the Circle of Days, o Círculo dos Dias, I'm showing the book here. We have this interview on Zoom, so whoever wants to watch the video. So Ken Follett, as a reader, I had to research books that you said publicly that you loved reading.
Okay,
And you tell me if this is right. We start with, and they all have, I chose a few that have translation into Portuguese.
great.
The Day of the Jackal, O Dia do Chacal, by Frederick Forsyth.
Yes.
Is it true? You loved reading this
Brilliant,
book? Yeah.
a brilliant, brilliant thriller. And it was published about 10 years before Eye of the Needle. So when I wrote Eye of the Needle, I really had The Day of the Jackal in my mind. Um, the in The Day of the Jackal, there's a policeman who kind of gets on the trail of the jackal, and but he's always one step behind. And the way Frederick Forsyth constructed that chase story was absolutely brilliant. And of course, Eye of the Needle is a chase story. There's a spy. It's set in Britain in wartime. There's a spy, and there's a policeman who's found out about this spy and is trying to catch him. So there are similarities between the two books, and you know, I'm happy to acknowledge that I learned a lot from the master, from Frederick Forsyth.
Yeah, so it's a political a thriller about a professional assassin
Yeah.
hired to kill French President Charles de Gaulle. So the event actually happened, and then the rest, same as your genre, the rest is fictionalized.
Well, de Gaulle, of course, President de Gaulle was not assassinated. So it's
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
funny because you always know in that
The
book,
end.
you always know that it's not going to work, but it's still completely fascinating. And in Eye of the Needle,
Yes.
um, the spy is trying to do something that will sabotage the Normandy invasion, which was the turnaround point of the Second World War. But everybody knows that the Germans didn't win the war. So it's a little like the Day of the Jackal. But I said, when people said that to me, a friend of mine was reading the chapters as I was writing them. He's a television writer, and he was older than me, and so he remembered the war. He'd been alive in the war. He'd been a young man in the war. And so he was really checking what I was writing for historical accuracy. But then every time he would say to me, he would tell me he liked the chapter, but then he would say, "But who won the war?" And of course, everybody knows. So, but once again, it didn't really matter because the suspense still worked.
Of course. The eye of the needle that you're mentioning is in Portuguese, o buraco da agulha, your first book. And then, yeah, you have this cat and mouse tension. So the novel alternates between the assassin's perspective and the authorities, heightening suspense.
Exactly.
The Day of the Jackal, o Dia do Chacal. Then I'm going to uh, and Frederick Forsyth, he's written other books that are also translated into Portuguese. The Odessa File, o dossier Odessa, and the Dogs of War, os cães de guerra. So I have another book that I found you loved, The Spy Who Came In from the Cold, O Espião que Saiu do Frio, by John le Carré.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes. John le Carré is a completely different writer from Frederick Forsyth, or from me, in fact. His spy stories are very literary. They're low key and a little bit intellectual. Um, but I must say, I think The Spy Who Came In from the Cold is his best. And I didn't always like everything he wrote, but that was a masterpiece. Also a good film. Um, and um, what Le Carre wants to do is to get inside the mind of the spy. And Frederick Forsyth and I are sort of more interested in adventure.
Yeah, this is my more like it's psychological depth.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Whereas what I'm all about is making you want to turn the page.
Well, you've done it, but you know that. So it's a Cold War espionage novel that explores betrayal, moral ambiguity, and the human cost of intelligence work. So The story follows Alec Leamas. He's a weary British intelligence officer stationed in Berlin, and he has to go undercover. So he almost wrecks his life in order to be believable that he.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Another book you said you loved, and of course you can add your own. I had to research. I know, and I love these perks, these fun facts about authors, about John le Carré. Actually, his name was David John Moore Cornwell.
Yes, that's right.
He
Uh,
was
he obviously thought that David Cornwell wasn't a glamorous enough name.
exactly. No, but he was actually he adopted John le Carré because British intelligence officers, and he worked for MI5 and MI6, they were forbidden to publish under their real names.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I love these fun facts. Another book you loved, of course, John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath, As Vinhas da Ira.
Yes, it's a classic, of course. It's a
Yes.
classic of American literature, and it's a harsh story about the Great Depression in America,
Yeah.
and people were very, very, very poor, and didn't have enough to eat, and a lot of people went to California hoping for a better life. Look, Steinbeck was really good at writing about working class people who were having a rough time. And I must have been quite young when I read that book. I must have been about 14, I think I must have been
Wow, and you
when I
still
read that
remember.
book. And I can remember it very vividly. It's a book that will stay with you all your life if you read it.
Wow. And do you have any? I have one more that I found out that you loved. Also classic, sure, but also many times republished. Dune by Frank Herbert.
Yes, I've read that more than once. That is the greatest of all science fiction stories.
Yeah.
And I love science fiction. I tried to write science fiction when I was starting out, but I wasn't really very good at it. I wrote some short stories that were never published, and I gave up trying to write it, but I still enjoy reading it.
Okay, and sure, Dune is the
And Dune is a terrific work of the imagination. It's one of those novels that imagines an entire different universe. But it's not, set in a future where everything's automatic and run by robots and so on. It's set on a planet that is mostly desert, and it's the most of the story is set among the people who live on the desert. Very unusual for a science fiction story, but really original. As you can see, I read that in my teens, and as you can see, I still remember that one vividly as well.
and you reread it.
Yes, I reread it, yes.
So, do you have any contemporary books that you recently loved and you would like to recommend?
Well, I just discovered a Swedish novelist called Backman, Frederick Backman.
Oh, A Man Called Of and My
That's
Friends
right.
and
Yes, and his latest one is called My Friends. You obviously like that book too.
yeah, I love that.
It was, it's not necessarily my normal type of fiction because it's very grim. It's about a group of young people, most of whom have been abused in some way or another. So it's really, it's a tough novel, but I was completely fascinated. But I mean, I really think it's a masterpiece. And it's also very successful. I mean, we've both read it. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list, which is very unusual for a novel translated from Swedish. Very
Yeah.
unusual, especially this kind of, you know, S- Swedish mysteries get translated, but not often a literary novel like this. And yes, I'd certainly recommend that. I think most people, even though what I would say is, even if it doesn't seem like your kind of book or the kind of book you normally read, give it a try because you might enjoy it anyway.
Yeah, I think it's those books that everyone's gonna love. It's transversal.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, my friends. He's also actually he's translated in Portuguese. Os
Oh,
meus
good.
amigos. Yeah, or just my friends or friends. So Os meus amigos or amigos by
Right.
Frederick Backman. I recommend you his book also, A Man Called Of.
Okay, I've got it. I've got it here, but I haven't read it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Also beautiful, sad. And it was there's a movie, but of course, please read the book first. There's a movie, an American movie actually, by with Tom Hanks called A Man Called Otto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it comes from
Okay.
the book. It comes from the book.
Ah, okay. When I sign a movie contract, I always say that they must keep the title, and they always ask for the right to change the title, and I always say that's a deal breaker because um, you people spend so much money advertising movies, and they're also, if the title is the same, they're also advertising the book. So, it might be however much you get for the film rights, you're probably getting $5 million worth of advertising.
Yeah, exactly. That's so right. That's so right. I love that it's a deal breaker. Of course, you have to like, not gonna change on my watch.
That's right. That's right.
So Frederick Backman, great. And so these classics that I saw that you loved, The Day of the Jackal, The Spy Who Came In from the Cold, The Grapes of Wrath, and Dune. Would you have, if you would to choose just one, would you have an easy answer?
Oh, I'd pick The Day of the Jackal. I
Okay.
just, I just love so much the author's skill in handling suspense. And it's what I do. So when somebody does it really, really well, I really enjoy it. And I think to myself, I think, now I've got to do it like that. I've got to do it like that. So I would happily read that book again and again.
Wow, The Day of the Jackal, O Dia do Chacal. So now I have recommendations for you.
Oh, good. Okay.
So this one is lighter, but I thought it was funny. I remembered it naturally by reading your genre or your. It's not thriller at all, but it also has that research and fictionizing, imagining how it happened, what might have happened at the time.
Right.
So we're talking about 16th century. And
Right.
have you heard the polemic theory that William Shakespeare hasn't written his work?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so there's
I'm
probably you
getting a
know.
pencil to write this down.
Okay, so Jodi Picoult, she's written a novel.
Oh, yeah. She's very popular. Yeah.
She, I hadn't read her. I haven't had read her before, and then she actually was a guest in this podcast.
Oh, great.
So I read her last book. It's called By Any Other Name.
Ah, okay.
So what does she do? There's this real woman. She lived in the 16th century. She's English, Emilia Bassano. She was the first British poet ever to be published. A woman, of course,
Okay.
ever to be published. And so her theory, and of course she studied a lot, so you get to learn about her, Emilia Bassano, and then that's in the 16th century. Then you have someone from her family today that
Yeah.
studies her, a girl also. She writes playwrights,
Okay.
and she studies Emilia Bassano, and then it's like your books. I saw it. I saw her, and I smelled it. Your book, your Circle of the Days has. I smelled a lot of things here.
Okay.
And whenever now I look at Stonehenge, I will never see it the same way. It seems like I know the answers that even if you imagine them. So same thing here. Now that someone mentions mentions Shakespeare, I guess like I don't know if he did it. I don't know if he wrote that. So it seems like Emilio Bassano might have been one of his ghostwriters.
I see.
Okay,
Okay.
so I
Okay.
think okay, but
And of
then
course, I mean, I find that very plausible because it is remarkable how often women's role in history is just overlooked.
exactly.
It happens all the time. So,
Yeah.
okay. Oh,
And a
I'm
few
gonna try.
details like for example, when he passed away, he had none of his writing. He had nothing written in his desk in his house. So it doesn't make any sense if he wrote that much and
Yeah.
he didn't
Yeah.
have, and that's a fact. And also the plays that he wrote and the poetry that he wrote, it's not compatible with, he had girls, he had daughters, and he didn't put them to study. If he was who he showed he was with what he wrote, how come didn't his daughters learn, how to read and study? And so
Right. Yeah.
you have
Good
things that
question.
make, yeah, you come out of it with questions, and then
Right.
she fictionalized the answers. There. Another book I have, a Portuguese writer to recommend to you because it's also a visionary allegory and it echoes Herbert's Dune and Steinbeck's social conscience,
Oh,
which is blindness. Have you heard of it? He's a Nobel Prize, José Saramago. In Portuguese, Ensaio sobre a Cegueira. It's a modern allegorical novel about a society collapsing after everyone is, it's like an epidemic of blindness. Everybody becomes blind.
and what's the author's name again?
José Saramago. He's won the Nobel Prize.
Oh, okay.
And it's
I should know
visionary.
him.
Yeah, you will recognize the name. And
Great.
it's philosophical. So, how do humans adapt to extreme conditions? And this is
Yeah.
your type of theme. So,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah. And then
Okay.
another last recommendation to you, A Small Death in Lisbon, Uma Pequena Morte em Lisboa. It exposes social injustice and also delivers the suspense and history detail that you admire. It's a historical thriller set in Lisbon, and it has like a Forsyth-like precision. And it won the
Nice.
CWA Gold Dagger Award. So it's a thriller. Maybe you will like it. So these are
Yeah.
my recommendations, and I don't want to take much of your time, but it was a pleasure getting to know you. What an
Thank you. I
honor.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. And for those who are listening to us, The Circle of Days by Ken Follett. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much.